You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground at Gravitas? We don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda, or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture.
The Belt and Road Initiative is definitely failing, and I don't think it will survive this decade.
I think the BRI had its seeds of failure planted from the beginning, and we're now starting to see those seeds of failure come to pass.
Hello and welcome to WION Live broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at the top stories for this hour. Ahead of the closely watched meeting between Kevin McCarthy and Tsai Ing-wen in Los Angeles, Taiwan says China has stationed its aircraft carrier near its waters. China had voiced anger on the meeting. New U.S. Ambassador to Russia Lynn M. Tracy presents her credentials to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin tells the U.S. envoy Washington is responsible for the crisis in Ukraine. WTO projects global trade growth to slow to 1.7% in 2023, down from 2.7% in 2022. War in Ukraine, high inflation, and financial uncertainty are to be blamed. Buckingham Palace in the UK releases invitations for the official coronation of King Charles III on the 6th of May. Kamala Parker Bowles is addressed in the invite as the Queen. Joel Embiid produces one of the best performances of the NBA season and puts himself firmly in MVP contention. The center scored 52 points to lead the Philadelphia 76ers past the Boston Celtics. Despite dire warnings from Beijing, U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is scheduled to meet with the Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen in California. The meeting outside Los Angeles will happen on what is technically being called as a stopover for President Tsai Ing-wen, who is on a 10-day trip to Latin America. Beijing claims Taipei as its own territory and has strongly opposed the meeting between McCarthy and the Taiwanese president. Earlier, China also warned McCarthy that it was playing with fire meeting Tsai. Before meeting McCarthy, Tsai met with senior security officials and discussed the regional situation. Taiwan's presidential office said that the president asked relevant units to continue to grasp the surrounding situation in real time and keep her updated while she is overseas. Tsai's visit to Southern California comes after trips to Guatemala and Belize and after a brief stop in New York last week. Historic and surreal times here in the United States as a former president was arraigned in a Manhattan courtroom on criminal charges on Tuesday. Donald Trump surrendered to face criminal charges stemming from hush money payments made in 2016 to adult movie star Stormy Daniels. Many in the United States have dubbed this to be the extraordinary chain of events and as it being a political witch hunt. My colleagues and I have put this report together. Please take a look.
A defiant-looking Trump, two officers refuse to hold the door open for Donald Trump as he enters the courtroom.
President Trump, will you come speak to us?
There were no mugshots, rather a stone-faced former president, lips pursed in apparent anger. Manhattan District Attorney in a terse tone saying the charges brought against the former president are based on false statements made to cover up other crimes, considered a felony under New York law.
We today uphold our solemn responsibility to ensure that everyone stands equal before the law. No amount of money and no amount of power changes that enduring American principle.
The reaction outside the court gave an indication of how the case has split opinion in the country.
Well, a lot of people are pretty tired of Trump, and a lot of people feel like this circus needs to end at some point.
Of course, he's innocent. Not only is he innocent, he sacrificed his billionaire lifestyle to save this country.
Former president has been spewing, vitriol and a lot of arguably nonsense, and I feel like the charges brought upon him are appropriate.
Back in Florida, Trump declared himself a victim, terming the entire case a witch hunt.
The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. For our elections were like those of a third world country. And now this massive election interference at a scale never seen before in our country.
While some say it is a moment of supreme shame, the Trump team immediately used the situation for a battle cry. For all his bravado, 76-year-old Trump is in serious trouble. During his decades in the public eye, he has shown an astonishing ability to wriggle out of legal corners, whether during his many business disputes or even as president, when Republicans acquitted him in 2 unprecedented impeachment trials.
The question is whether or not he'll be able to convince enough independent voters that he deserves another shot at the White House. A lot to ponder and a lot of questions left unanswered. But one thing is for sure, Donald Trump's lawyers have said that they are willing to fight to the very end. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One. For more on this, we are joined by a political commentator, Mark Merowitz, live from New York. Mark, good to see you. Welcome back to WION. Bragg's indictment fails to state a crime, not once, but 34 times. We waited time and again for him to come out and say what that secondary crime is, but we never heard about it. What are your thoughts about what happened yesterday?
Well, I have the indictment here in front of me, and I'm turning the pages and turning the pages. And as you say, and in fact, Brad commented on this, he says he doesn't need to tell us what the second crime is. Actually, if you read it through, it is, from many legal scholars, I'm a lawyer myself, from many legal scholars' view, a very weak document that is not does not hold up really very much. It doesn't provide information, but Bragg told us at the press conference he doesn't need to tell us what the second crime is. Presumably, it relates to election violations. He mentioned in the press conference state law violation of election law. All right, what is that? We don't even know. It's a federal election. Federal election law violation. Well, the Federal Election Commission and DOJ passed on this, while, for example, fining the Hillary Clinton campaign for an election violation. So this is a very tenuous accusation. I would quote John Bolton, who actually quoted Beria, the head of the secret police in Russia, who once said, "Get me the man and I'll find you the crime." And that's what Bolton said, and I think that is really so appropriate. Finding something about someone and trying to pierce the Teflon of President Trump and trying to get something out there is really inappropriate, I think, from my humble opinion.
You know, what's also interesting is whether or not we have to ponder if Alvin Bragg knows how to read a calendar, because every one of the 34 acts that Bragg charges as felonies happen after the 2016 election. So if we're talking about, you know, this was interference in elections and had people known, for example, that this hush money case happened, they would have voted for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump wouldn't have been elected. But these are from February to December 2017. This was when Donald Trump was already in the White House. So, I mean, yeah, it doesn't say in the indictment what the second crime is. He doesn't have to say it. But on the one hand, we have this. And on the other hand, the public, or at least Trump's lawyers, don't we really have the right to know what it is after everything that Alvin Bragg put us through?
Well, it's more so than they have the right to know. This is a former president. So I think in a country like the United States, the public is entitled to know. And actually a CNN poll I'm looking at, more than 70% of respondents thought that this was political, that this was a political targeting of a former president. In fact, Bragg actually campaigned repeatedly on the idea that he was going to find something about President Trump. And by the way, and here's another one, as a New Yorker, you surely know that Alvin Bragg came in and took all host of felonies and flipped them into misdemeanors. Here he's got a whole host of misdemeanors and he's making them into felonies. So there's something really off base that's going on around here. Also, some of the stories that were brought up now, and the doorman, right? The doorman who got paid off because he was going to tell a story about Trump having fathered a child out of wedlock, which turned out not to be true. And that was going to be funded by these AMI company, David Pecker, who was of the National Enquirer, which they never funded. In other words, this thing has more strands and more threads that you can't get through. And the next point is, you mentioned calendars. Well, the next hearing is going to be in December 2023. That's a hearing. That's not a trial. And then the trial is going to take place possibly in 2024 when Donald Trump probably is going to be running for president. Is a judge going to hold a full trial of a former president who's a candidate for president in the middle of the primaries, in the middle of the election season? This thing is going to go on. And what's really wrong about it is it's distracting from all the other problems and issues which we are facing, not only as New Yorkers, but as Americans. We have so many issues and problems in the world, which your report also talked about. Those are the things we should be focusing on, not trying to find something. We have this game, Where's Waldo? You know, we try to find Waldo in this big picture. Let's find something here that we can pin on President Trump. And, you know, in terms of his behavior, and as some of the people you interviewed indicated, his behavior has not been highly laudable. But is it criminal? Is it a felony? It's a former president. And to have this spectacle in New York City of a former president of the United States being taken into a court and being arraigned for bookkeeping violations. I'm not saying it's right to do that, but there's got to be a high standard. This is what the Wall Street Journal said in its editorial. If you're going to arraign, you're going to arrest a former president, it has to be for something really, really important. And the American people, I don't think, will tolerate this complete show of shows here, this entertainment show that the Democratic Party is trying to put forward. I think at the end of the day, who are the losers? The American people. American people are losing here because we're not focusing on the things we need to focus on.
That's right. That's right. Mark Marowitz, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for that thorough analysis. We're going to wait and see what happens. But, it's no surprise that Donald Trump's attorneys and lawyers were optimistic that hopefully this one case at least will probably not go to trial. Mark Marowitz from New York. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Trump's alleged affair with adult star Stormy Daniels has been under the spotlight in recent days, but the criminal case against Trump unveiled on Tuesday rests not just on the alleged high-profile affair. There is another lesser-known woman who allegedly received payments to stay silent about her alleged affair with Donald Trump. Karen McDougal, a former Playboy model who was voted Playmate of the Year in 1998. The 52-year-old former model says that she had an affair with Trump in 2006 and 2007. Trump has denied having a sexual relationship with her. American Media Inc., the corporate parent of the National Enquirer, has acknowledged paying McDougal $150,000 for the rights to her story to prevent her from going public with it ahead of the 2016 presidential election. In Trump's charging documents, prosecutors said that Trump, his lawyer, Michael Cohen, and AMI, a former chief executive, David Pecker, agreed that Trump would reimburse AMI. But Pecker, who's also a longtime friend of Donald Trump, ultimately opted not to seek repayment after talking with a company lawyer. They added that Trump did not want the woman's story to be public because he was concerned about the effects it would have on his candidacy. The French President Emmanuel Macron has landed in China. Macron's arrival will be shortly followed by that of EU chief Ursula von der Leyen. The two European leaders seek to smoothen ties with a key economic partner while broaching thorny issues like Ukraine and trade. Macron spoke to the U.S. President Joe Biden shortly before setting out on his first trip to China since 2019. Europe is trying to engage the Chinese President Xi Jinping for hastening the end of the Russia-Ukraine war, in which Macron says China could play a major role.
La guerre menée par la Russie en Ukraine a profondément atteint l'ordre international que nous connaissons depuis 1945. Et cette guerre, à plusieurs reprises j'ai qualifié d'impérialiste, de coloniale, est venue en effet fouler aux pieds nombre des principes de la Charte des Nations Unies que deux membres permanents du Conseil de sécurité que nous sommes doivent résolument défendre.
Von der Leyen has not traveled to China since becoming the European Commission president more than 3 years ago. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's visit to China late last year did happen. Europe's relations with China has soured over time, first due to a stalled investment pact in 2021, and then U.S.-led Europe, an integral part of NATO, took offense at Beijing not condemning Russia over Ukraine. For Macron, who is facing embarrassing pension protests at home, the trip also offers a chance to strike some economic bargains. He has arrived with a 50-strong business delegation. European Commission President von der Leyen, however, has said in the past that the EU must, quote, de-risk ties with Beijing. This includes limiting Chinese access to sensitive technology and reducing reliance for key inputs such as critical material. Macron invited von der Leyen on the trip as a way to protect European unity and project that, although he has been more reconciliatory in his approach to China than the EU chief herself. Macron has pushed the EU to be more robust in its trade relations with China. He has publicly refrained from using strong anti-China rhetoric as well. Beyond trade, Europe wants to persuade China to use its influence over Russia to bring peace to Ukraine, or at least persuade Beijing to desist from directly supporting Russia. Macron and von der Leyen are expected to convey the message that she should talk to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has crossed the border into Poland and has begun an official visit to one of Kyiv's closest allies. This is the latest of his rare trips outside the country since Russia's invasion. Upon arrival in Warsaw, the Ukrainian president and his wife were greeted by the Polish President Duda. During his visit, the Ukrainian leader will hold talks with not only the Polish president, but also the prime minister, and sign bilateral agreements. He will also meet with representatives of Polish businesses, volunteers and rescuers, and the mayors of cities bordering Ukraine. Poland awarded Zelensky the Order of the White Eagle, the country's oldest and highest civilian distinction.
For me, it's a great honor to be here today together with my spouse and thank the President, thank his team, thank the Polish government and each and every Polish citizen for what you have already done.
The visit also comes as a gesture of thanks to neighboring nation for its critical support in Ukraine's defense against Russia's invasion. Poland has welcomed refugees from Ukraine, and a NATO member has played an important role in persuading other Western powers to supply battle tanks and other weaponry to Kyiv. The visit is a rare foray for Zelensky out of Ukraine since Russia unleashed the war in February 2022. The visit to Poland follows visits to the United States, Britain, France, and Belgium. It stands out from others because it was announced in advance without the secrecy of past visits.
Especially during the first days and weeks when the help was so important. The help of the border areas of Poland, which has opened its doors and has opened its borders, and there were no borders between us, and I really hope that it's the beginning and there will be no borders.
Our next story is about a high-tech robot
designed basically to combine the movement with the brain. So it's a touch screen, and also it was like gonna be like a game, so kids can interact with him and see what Einstein was doing. Now the second screen now is directly connected to the brain with the ChatGPT. So you see actually here what the robot is recognizing before it sends the signal to the computer to change the voice. So the computer also is being used to change the voice of the robot to sound like Einstein.
Now the question is, what can this ChatGPT powered robot do? It can tell jokes and make you laugh.
Why did the chicken cross the playground to get to the other slide? The math book said, because it had too many problems.
It makes an attempt at speaking Greek and guides a listener on how Albert Einstein's theory of relativity can be taught in a class. The bot also enjoys reading science books and spending leisure time with his violin. Teachers say the ultimate purpose of Einstein is to incorporate it into lesson plans. ChatGPT is redefining existing technologies, and we can't wait to see how far this AI chatbot goes in making existing technologies better and smarter.
It's a touchscreen. It was designed basically to...
That's all from us here in New York City. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching. I'm Susan Tehrani signing off for now, but don't go away. A lot more news and headlines coming up next, only on WION World is One.
WION, now available on Spotify and Google Podcast.
is bracing for another rail strike.
The price of energy and food continues to rise. It's no surprise the economy is in such doldrums.
It is a war in which neither side appears on the verge of victory.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Hi, I'm Susan Tehrani and I'm in New York.
And I'm Katie, and I'm coming to you from London.
The world is fast evolving.
Some new friendships and rivalries.
Vested interests that build biased narratives and opinions that influence the world.
At WION, we bring you a fresh, new perspective.
Objective, unhinged,
and authentic.
From the power centers of the world
that matter.
Every day at these times on WION.
There's a lot of noise out there. How do we remove the clutter and cut to the chase? How do we step aside from divisive agendas to get to the truth? How can we be informed in a sea of disinformation? In a global world, we need to be aware of what's happening across the world. This world looks at the biggest stories in the world and tries to understand them from an Indian perspective. The real facts backed by analysis from the newsmakers who matter. Join me on This World as we tell you what's really happening. This World on WION World is One. With me, Vikram Chandra.
YO1 Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to YO1 Health Resort. Make your reservation at yo1.com.
What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy. A nation brimming with young talent, a pioneer